Contrary to common belief, history is not a fixed thing. It begins to metamorphose almost as soon as events occur. After a few decades, the historical record can become distorted almost beyond the recognition of those who lived it. The history of the battle for Tarawa in November 1943 was a victim of this peculiar process. Despite initial defeats and government efforts to convince them that America was in for a long struggle, as in all wars, too many Americans somehow convinced themselves it would be a short and relatively painless struggle. Sanitization of the war by Hollywood did little to help. Civilian and military correspondents had accompanied troops into battle from the beginning of the war, but at Tarawa they would accompany the very first assault waves to record what was destined to be one of the most brutal battles of World War II. Yet from the very first minutes this plan began to disintegrate. By chance, most of the reporters and cameramen ended up on a small, relatively isolated area of the precarious beachhead. And as always, critical events, along with countless acts of heroism and self-sacrifice, went unrecorded. Still, from the correspondents and cameramen would emerge some of the finest war reporting of any conflict. Classics like Robert Sherrod's book, Tarawa, The Story of a Battle, and the Academy Award-winning short documentary With the Marines at Tarawa. Unfortunately, they were long in coming. Both Sherrod's book and the film were not released until the following year. For most of the public, perceptions of the battle were shaped by the relentless propaganda machinery of the government and news media. Still photographs and news films shot in Tarawa were released in newsreels and published in newspapers and magazines, and the results were graphic and truly disturbing to American audiences accustomed to Hollywood's pap. But then people who were not there began to improve the reporting for propaganda purposes. Following the usual practices of the time for morale purposes, the accounts were rendered into exercises in cheerleading. One radio program, with voiceover actors representing Lieutenant Ed Bale, the commander of the medium tank company, and correspondent Master Technical Sergeant Sam Schaffer, both veterans of Tarawa, was truly cringeworthy by the standards of today. Then the real embellishment began. Writers began to improve upon the stories. Like the game telephone, where children stand in a circle and relay a whispered message, the original stories of Tarawa morphed into strange and often fantastic tales, as they were repeatedly rewritten over the ensuing decades. In the year 2000, Colonel Ed Bale told me that the only accurate account of the encounter between his tank and a Japanese tank on Tarawa had once appeared in the old newspaper column Ripley's Believe It or Not. Despite his repeated efforts to clarify actual events, reputable historians and popular writers alike propagated some very peculiar versions of the event into the 21st century. Countless other events in the battle underwent similar metamorphoses. In 2012, Romain Cansiere embarked upon his own effort to record the story of the Charlie Company medium tanks on Tarawa. He contacted me, and a lengthy and fruitful collaboration followed. Along the way, Romain underscored some old truths, and his dogged persistence in archival research taught me some new things. One of the most irritating practices of both historians and authors is the tendency to present only a single linear narrative, the absolute truth, if you will. In reality, as General George Patton, among many others, noted, battle is an orgy of disorder. Senior officers may set events into motion, but battles must be understood from the bottom up. The outcome of any battle is the end result of the millions of tiny random incidents, Clausewitz's famous friction of war, that disrupt the tidy plans of the most careful general. Tarawa was this in spades, as units were fragmented and communications collapsed. The end result was an even more exaggerated version of the already colossal ambiguity of battle. We've approached the story of a single company on Tarawa from 3 lines of evidence. The first and most valuable are the written memoirs of and recorded interviews with surviving veterans. Second are the official records of the period, unit diaries, reports, and other documents. Third is an analysis of photographic evidence, still photos and films taken on the ground by the combat cameramen, and aerial photos taken by naval aircraft as real-time reconnaissance to document the course of the battle. In most cases, we have been able to reconcile and integrate all 3 lines of evidence. However, each of these